Now, and
will you let us know who's here and not?
yes, good morning and welcome to the DASNY board meeting of July 17th. For members, we have our chair, Lisa Gomez, vice chair, Jerry Romsky. For other members, we have in New York City, Beryl Snyder is in the New York City office. Here in Albany, we have Kent Separud, Ken Evans, and Adrian Swazerski. And in our Buffalo office, we have Janice McKinney. Joan Sullivan is joining via Zoom. Al Carney is joining us by phone. He will not be voting today, but is joining in the meeting. And then members who are absent today are Wellington Chen and Christina Coughlin.
Great.
And with that, I turn it back to you.
Okay, we are going to move our agenda around a little bit, but Robert, you have some exciting folks to introduce, I believe.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. We'll be following up on last month's exciting introductions to our internship class. We have additional folks that are joining the DASNY team. We have our new public finance and portfolio monitoring analyst, as well as our public finance fellows. So I want to first introduce our newest member to the public finance and portfolio monitoring staff, Juan Reyes Alvarez, who's joining us as a financial analyst. He's with us, I believe, in Albany. Raise your hand, Juan, or stand up.
Okay.
Perfect.
Welcome, Juan.
Welcome aboard. Juan comes to us from NBT Bank, where he was a financial analyst, and he's a graduate of Russell Sage College. We'd also like to introduce our two public finance fellows. We're restarting our diversity fellowship program this year. So we had two successful classes in 2018 and 2019, and then paused the program as a result of the pandemic. But the diversity fellowship program runs for 1 year. They do 6 months with us at DASNY and then 6 months at our investment banking partners starting in January. So Justin Gong is a graduate of Baruch College. And after his stint with us, he's going to be going to JP Morgan. We also have Mujtaba Habibullah, who is also a graduate of Baruch College and will be going to Ramirez and Company after their stint with us. So let's take this opportunity to welcome Juan, Justin, and Mujtaba. And we look forward to you guys working with us and enjoying your time with us here at DASNY.
Great.
I'll turn it back to the chair. Welcome.
Right.
Robert, will you make a decision at some point whether to, and this is really a question for the chair before you get it, but would you permit them to come back in to present to the board some of the work that they are doing while they're with us?
Sure, that'd be great. I think we can wrap up our summer and try and have folks do that presentation. The good thing about these folks is they're here a little bit longer. Our other interns will probably be gone.
They'll be gone by then. I got it. And it's a question for the board chair. It's not, I mean, I can't ask you to do that until you and she have a conversation about it. But I think that'd be a great idea, frankly.
Great idea, Al. We'll look forward to scheduling that at the appropriate time. Welcome, fellows. Okay, so behind tab 1 are the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Thank you, Jerry and Beryl. I would like to just note that Nadine, our general counsel, has to leave today's meeting early, so we're going to mix up the order a little bit so we can get Nadine's report, which will be given in executive session. May I have a motion to go into executive session? Thank you, Beryl and
So did we approve the minutes?
I think so.
any questions on the minutes?
No, none. Did we approve them?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are approved. Okay, now we will take a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of a particular corporation, matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and proposed pending or current litigation. Jerry, I think you
Yes.
moved.
Certainly.
Beryl, I think you seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Sarah, would you send us to executive session, please?
Recording back.
Now, we good?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, one more time. We are now back in the public session. We have been joined by our board member Wellington Chen for the remainder of the board meeting. While we were in the executive session, no decisions were made other than to return to public session. All right, moving on, we have the governance committee report. Beryl?
Thank you, Chairwoman. The governance committee met immediately before this meeting. And after approving the minutes, we discussed the request before the committee members to recommend approval of certain salary actions for staff officers consistent with Budget Bulletin D-1152. I believe that in our board packet, there is a memo summarizing what that is for all the board members that read it carefully. And the committee unanimously recommended full board approval at this time. I'd like to turn it back to the chair to call for a full board approval. Unless there are any questions or comments about the bulletin or the implementation of the bulletin. It happens virtually more or less once a year, dependent on how the meeting dates run. And it's the implementation of salary increases for staff officers. Chairman Gomez, if there are no questions, I send it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Could we have a motion to approve the resolution provided by the governance committee?
Sure.
Jerry, could we have a second? Thank you, Joan. All in favor of the resolution? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Great, thank you. Next, we will turn it over to Jerry for the finance committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Finance Committee met today, prior to today's full board meeting. We first adopted the meeting minutes from the June meeting of Finance. Then we advanced to discuss the addition to the NYU commercial paper program that was adopted in February to add an additional project related to the purchase by NYU of an existing residence hall that they're leasing somewhere in the East Village, I think on East 6th Street. After some discussion, we unanimously agreed that be approved at today's full board meeting. Unless there's any other questions or concerns, that concludes my report, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, since all board members were here for the finance committee, do we want to have another presentation? Okay, to go directly into an approval. Okay, everybody. Okay, so Dave, do you want to just quickly summarize the transaction and then we can ask for a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll give a quick summary, then I'll turn it over to bond counsel to discuss the documents. So today the board is being asked to adopt necessary documents to allow financing of an additional project on NYU's existing commercial paper program that was approved by the board on February 14th, 2024. Project consists of the acquisition of a 45,000 square foot, 13-story student residence that's located on 200 East 6th Street. As the members are aware, the seeker approval needs to be completed prior to board approval, and that approval was completed on July 16th. So other than the project, there were no other changes to the commercial paper program that was approved by the board. So at this point, I'll turn it to Dr. Bashin to
Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. Before you for consideration is the adoption of the first supplemental resolution to the general resolution, which established a commercial paper program for the benefit of New York University to finance or refinance capital projects for the university or to refinance or otherwise pay outstanding notes issued under the program. The program authorizes the issuance by the authority of one or more series of notes from time to time, provided that the aggregate principal amount of notes that may be outstanding at any one time does not exceed $250 million, and the final maturity of all notes issued under the general resolution is not later than the 30th anniversary of the date that notes were first issued under the general resolution. Notes were first issued on May 2nd, 2024. The first supplemental resolution does not alter either the maximum amount or the final maturity of the notes. The first supplemental resolution would authorize an amendment to the loan agreement between the authority and the university to include an additional project that may be financed with proceeds of the notes. The additional project consists of the acquisition of real property on East 6th Street in Manhattan, which is currently leased by the university and used as a dormitory. Thank you for your attention. At this time, Neil and I would welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? You're hearing none. May we have a motion to approve? Thank you, Beryl. Thank you, Jerry. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for your time. Robert, do you have more presidential reporting stuff, or did you?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I saved the good stuff.
All right,
for-
Robert's gonna now take us through the rest of his president's report.
Great. So wanted to report to the board that I had been meeting along with Portia with our investment banking teams on the public finance front. As a result, we are almost through our panel of banks. I think we have a few more left since our last board meeting, and some of the feedback from those meetings, in addition to understanding the coverage teams that are supporting DASNY in our transactions, is getting feedback on some of the work that the board has been doing with respect to guidelines. And I think almost to a person on the higher ed and the healthcare front, there has been real support for the improvements that we have made to guidelines in terms of being able to be more flexible with the clients that they serve and hence the clients that we serve, and that being a real benefit in our ability to potentially work with our existing clients, but potentially new clients. So I just wanted the board to know that that work is really translating and recognized by the investment banking community, as well as our prospective client base. Also along those lines, we are looking at the work that we're doing in with the health sciences and the public health laboratory. That's moving forward. I'm sure Steve will have some more updates on that, but the broad strokes are we continue to move ahead. We have moved ahead with the soil borings and site locations, and that we expect this the schematic design component to wrap up towards the fourth quarter of 24 and moving into bid packages in 2025. That's a significant project for us, and we're also looking at MWBE elements with that project, as we do with all of the projects that we have. On the employee engagement front, we had a number of different activities this past year. We had a walking tour in June with the Albany staff talking about the area around DASNY and around the 515 Broadway location in Albany, and that we're going to continue to do those activities. We have one today, which is our Lunch and Learn, focusing on the Office of Environmental Affairs. For folks that are not familiar, they play an important role in all the construction projects, financing, and grants that we do. So they really are integral through the secret process in every single activity that DASNY plays in those areas. So we'll be having a chat with them and specifically talk about how that is applied to one of our clients the Staten Island Courthouse project. It's an interesting project of note. We completed that in 2015, but it had previously been the site of a quarantine hospital, and also some burial remains were found there, as they have been found in many parts of the city of New York when doing large projects. So we made an effort during that process to honor and recognize that history. So we'll be talking about that. We'll have a little bit of lunch brought in, recognizing that the descendants of those projects are of German and Irish descent. We wanted to honor that in terms of many ways, but including the menu for the conversation. And it's important also because we have follow-up business at the Court of Staten Island with a project happening, I think kicking off later on this year. So we'll also have a follow-up site visit there. But I think it's an important way for us to do that, recognize that, and in that visit that we do with the courthouse project, there'll also be a media event recognizing in October National Immigrant Day. So it's, in October, we're planning a bigger get together, and that ties in all of those
I
elements.
toured that project with Steve and his team. And it was a substantial, challenging project.
Make sure to let us know in advance, so any of the
Nice.
board members who can make these would, I'm sure would
Yes.
enjoy it.
Right on the third.
Robert, will today's celebration be in Albany?
No, actually, we're celebrating it a little bit in every location today. So the Lunch and Learn is here and as well, and board members are welcome to attend, and if they wish to participate between 12 and 1.
And how many folk are you expecting to join you? It sounds, it's exciting. It's an actual, I mean, I really feel strongly that it's a great idea, but how many folk are you looking for?
All right, Sarah, what do we have in terms of RSVPs for the Lunch and Learn?
I'm sure that'll be well attended.
We have close to 80 people participating between the New York City and Albany offices. And we also are having some folks join us remotely via Zoom. So Al or any of the other board members, if you would like to see the presentation, we can certainly get you the Zoom invite to that. But we do have about 80 staff members who have expressed interest.
That's fantastic. It really is. You've got that much interest and you've been able to secure that many commitments to be there. We should be very proud of that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
well,
We're going to keep working on the employee engagement component. Sarah, you had something to add?
I was just going to say, we'll circulate the Zoom invite for any board members who are not able to come to one of the offices who would like to see the presentation remotely. You can feel free to pop in and see that.
Thank you so much.
Sarah, you're very kind to do that. Thank you.
Great.
Yep,
Anything
I have a
else?
few more
Okay.
items. We've been busy here at DASNY. Wanted to make mention that we completed the sales tax transaction, $1.2 billion. It was issued competitively, less than the 1.6 that the board authorized, but we were able to do that specifically for transportation projects. It was a very successful transaction. I'll let Portia elaborate on the specific details in her report, but the highlights are, essentially the state borrowed at an interest cost of 4.19%, which is exceptionally strong. And we've got strong bids from a number of our investment banking partners, ultimately Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley won the respective tranches.
Okay.
So that has been good. Following up on the grants, going to switch gears from the public finance side to the grant side. The governor announced two particular programs that we administered: the nonprofit NYSIP program, the Nonprofit Infrastructure Capital and Investment Program, and the Veterans Nonprofit Capital Program. That's a little over $40 million. The NYSIP program is 39.6. The Veterans program was 1.1 to almost 136 nonprofits participating in these programs. All competitive. Thank you to the grants team for working through that process, scoring those grants, and working through the different steps that are required to be able to deliver those to these worthy nonprofit organizations and veteran organizations. We are doing the same right now with New York Swims. Currently have.
Robert, before you leave that, might we know the approximate size of the average grant?
You had that, Sarah? I know we have that information on the
No,
website.
I don't know the actual average, but they range from very small grants of 50,000 up to $500,000 or so. And there's a wide variety of grantees. We consider it a very successful program to fund all kinds of programs in varying amounts. So
that's terrific. I mean, it sounds like we have figured out how to handle our investment in not-for-profits, and I'm very proud of that. You guys have done a great job. It's taken us a while to get there, but it sounds like we're getting there, and with some luck, we'll be successful. We'll continue to be successful.
Thank you, Al. So we're continuing to build on that, improve the processes on the competitive side, do better in terms of scoring. We recently also did $38 million in capital grants to 33 colleges and universities under our HECAP program, which is our Higher Educational Capital Matching Grant Program. So we've announced those, and then we are currently in the
Robert,
process.
would you tell us a little bit about HECAP? I don't know that all the board members are aware of what it is. Maybe I'm the only one who's sketchy on it, but I've been told it's a terrific project, and I've been told that by people whom I respect. Could you, or you don't have to do it now, you can actually have somebody tell us about HECAP at another meeting. But I'd like to hear a bit more about what the dollars do.
Sure. Well, first of all, these awards support projects that provide construction and renovation of new equipment, laboratory and research spaces, the purchase of new instructional technologies and equipment, and other significant investments for private colleges and universities. So this, typically we do the CUNYs and SUNYs. This program allows other institutions to participate. Is it nonprofits only? Excuse me. Did I say that correctly, Sarah?
Yep. It's colleges and private colleges and universities throughout the state. That's correct.
Great. So we'll provide more information on that. And I just want to also mention we are undergoing grants for childcare programming as well. So a number of different grant programs.
So the plan is that we would help to finance at these private colleges and universities child care programs.
Nope, separate
for what,
program.
professors?
Sorry about that.
Teachers?
Nope, separate program. So the HECAP goes
Okay.
specifically towards that. Child care is a different competitive grant focusing on capital for child care centers and facilities.
That's terrific, Robert. That's terrific that we believe that we can pull that off. It's something that we can all be very proud of. That's outstanding.
That's one of the important parts of when we talk about DASNY and the things that we do. And one of the areas that we're going to continue to highlight is the breadth and scope of the grants that we're administering. These are the programs that we're mentioning are just the competitive programs, not even the ones that we're doing administratively through our legislative partners. So there's a lot of good work happening there. I'll also update folks very quickly on the SWIMS program, which is again another competitive grant that has been championed by the governor, focusing on parks in partnership with Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation to help support swimming facilities, pools across the state. We issued that grant competitively. The application deadline was for round one, which is somewhere between $60 to $90 million, was completed on Friday, July 12th, we received 59 applications totaling $195 million from municipalities across the state. So staff is working on scoring those. We've committed to doing that by August 12th and expect the awards to come later on that month on the 28th. So working very diligently on this new program, but tremendous demand and subscription, and looks like it's going to be a very exciting initiative, certainly for the first round, and then stay tuned for information on the second round in terms of timing and how that will be released. I think that
And kids in New York State will benefit extraordinarily from this effort. And I think in your public relations effort, we should make it clear that DASNY is doing something that it has not done before to this extent. Really proud of this. It's terrific and I've got an axe to grind. Black and brown kids don't get this kind of support in most cities, in most states, but that we can do it and find money to do it with private institutions is terrific.
And in this case, there's a particular needs assessment focusing on disadvantaged communities with respect to the SWIMS program. So real alignment in terms of governor's initiative, serving underserved communities, and really improving access.
I know, Robin, and I'm sure Lisa will attest, we're out in
Do what you can. Keep up the great work.
the Rockaways, and every year, unfortunately, as recently as I think a week and a half ago, there's always a number of young teenagers, and yes, they're probably out after 6, and they're probably getting tied up in a riptide, blah, 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 blah. But it's unfortunate. I mean, I've been out there 20 years, and every year, there's always 5 or 6 drownings, mostly of young kids in the area, who can't swim, and
Think they're invincible and.
right, you don't think they're invisible and not recognizing there's riptides and whatever, so I certainly
And
hope that that area, as well as areas on Long Island that right on the water, receive that type of funding.
Attention.
Attention, yes, thank you.
And that's important. I think we have a number of applications from the city of New York. And I think it's worth mentioning that with regards to specifically the lifeguard issue and operating support, Department of State is administering a program to help support with operating
When we
needs.
built Valver, we built the whole process, but we built the YMCA there with some assistance, obviously, but the pool was a big issue by the borough president at the time, Helen Marshall, to fit a 9-foot pool. And Steve will test building a 9-foot pool in the Rockaways is not an easy challenge, but we did, and the whole point of that was really for lifeguard training. And unfortunately, I don't think I've really seen the lifeguard training there, so maybe that will be part of your program, but I'll be quiet now.
So that wraps up my report on SWIMS. With respect to media coverage, we received significant coverage on many of the programs that I mentioned on the grant perspective, on the grant side, as well as some of our public finance transactions, including our school bonds transaction, and even some coverage of the recent appointment of our new board member, Chancellor Siverud. So again, welcome and thank you again.
Good.
Yep, we are complete.
Okay, great, thank you.
Robert, it's Al again. Do you get requests to do media sort of from right field, left field, wherever they come from?
We're starting to.
Are you
a little bit here and there.
Okay.
As we start putting things out there in the universe, we start getting, feedback and interest from the press. So that's
This will
starting
be
to
an
happen.
evolving thing, and I would expect, hopefully, if we ever get through our procurement process, that we would be able to have a little bit more positive news out there in the world. Okay.
That's a great comment, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Al. All right, so moving on to tab 5, the public finance report. Portia?
Thank you very much. Yeah, the members have a meticulous standard public finance reports. Just to add a little bit more color to Robert's comments on the sales tax transaction, again, $1.2 billion. We broke those bonds down into 3 groups of approximately $400 million apiece, basically making it sort of more manageable in size with the hopes that more firms would bid on those bonds. There was good, healthy response, very robust. We got 9 bidders for the first grouping and 8 bidders for each of the second and the third groupings as well. And as Robert had mentioned, it was Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and Bank of America that won the 3 different bid groupings. Just a brief market update. Total year-to-date new issuance volume for this year is approximately $267.8 billion. That's up approximately 27.4% from last year at this point in time. The supply for this week is really pretty heavy at about $11 billion. That includes the Pace University deal that we are in the market with today. Supply has been heavy in recent weeks. We expect it to continue to be heavy as borrowers are trying to get into the market before the election. Municipal bond funds saw inflows last week and also saw inflows the week previous. Tax and bond yields were lower by 2 basis points across the curve on Tuesday, with the 10 and 30-year AAA MMD closing at 2.78% and 3.66% respectively. U.S. government bond yields were lower, with the 10-year Treasury yield decreasing by 6 basis points to 4.17% and the 30-year decreasing by 8 basis points to 4.38%. Since the June board meeting, 1-year MMD has decreased 19 basis points, 10-year has decreased 1 basis point, 30-year decreased by 3 basis points. During that same time period, the 10-year Treasury yield decreased by 11 basis points, and the 30-year decreased by 2 basis points. One of the other things that are in your materials, there's a memo as well as a black line document dealing with our board financing authorization policy. This is really just for discussion only, and it really picks up on a discussion we had back with the board in February. As you know, currently certain financings are eligible to be considered with a 1-step or a single approval versus a 2-step process, which is resolution to proceed, adoption of documents. The financings that are currently eligible for single approval are state-supported debt, so our print and sales tax deals, the bonds that we sell on behalf of the school districts through our school district pool program. Refundings for borrowers that are currently in DASNY's portfolio are also eligible for single approval, and that's refundings of DASNY debt as well as non-DASNY debt for those borrowers that are in our portfolio. And lastly, higher rated higher education and healthcare borrowers, and highly rated is defined as being in the A category. And, over the years, we have kind of looked at this policy in terms of the comfort level of including additional borrowers into that class of borrowers that are eligible for single approval. So the black line that you have before you in your materials looks to expand single approval authorization to higher ed and healthcare clients that are currently in our portfolio that are rated in the BBB category. So that's those that are in our portfolio, not new borrowers in the BBB category. We'd also like to discuss borrowers that are currently in DASNY's portfolio, where their credit is basically a programmatic credit. Entities like BOCES and libraries, NYSARC, there are a lot of transactions that we look at where basically there's state support going into state revenues, going into those programs, and those are the revenues that are used to pay debt service on the bonds. And then lastly, any borrower that is financing through a private placement where we know that the investors that are purchasing those bonds are qualified institutional buyers. Our private placements are only to QUIBs. They're sophisticated investors who clearly sort of are taking on and making their investment decision on their own. These changes are important as we continue to try to be competitive. Robert had noted You know, that the feedback that we've gotten from bankers is that the changes that we have made over time have been really very helpful, particularly for the higher ed and healthcare borrowers. You know, and the one-step issue is really one of, you know, what sort of a first impression. When folks call and they say that they want to access the market, you know, when we say, well, you know, we'll have to bring you twice, once is a resolution to proceed and once is an adoption of documents, it makes it seem as though it's a very lengthy and cumbersome process. You know, oftentimes, once we get into the discussion with the borrowers, even those borrowers who are eligible for a single approval will oftentimes choose to go with a two-step process because ultimately it could be quicker. If your documents are not ready, you can come do your first approval, go to the Public Authorities Control Board, and then come back for your second approval. You need to have DASNY board action before we can send anything to PACB. So in many ways, this is something that just helps with our outreach. It helps with our marketing when we talk to people to let them know that they could be eligible. I would just note that at the end of the day, they may choose to go one step, but they may also choose to go two steps. The other thing I would say is this is authorization. This isn't a requirement that you go with the one-step process. You know, staff can always exercise our judgment if we believe that it isn't the best course of action to move forward with a one-step process. You know, so with that, I'll stop and really looking for your thoughts.
Just briefly, Portia, the changes in 4E.
Yep.
Just take me through them for 1 minute. Just explain them to me so I get it. I think I got it, but.
Sure. So for
E, to the other, where you talk about the
so
private
this is really,
placement.
this is really talking about when different things need to happen in our financing process. So, you know, tax diligence shall be completed before mailing of the POS. That is a standard that we work with. This is just saying that if you're doing a private placement, to the extent that we wanted to include private placement in the list of those borrowers that are eligible for single approval, that criteria would also apply for a private placement, meaning that tax diligence would be completed prior to the mailing of a POS for a public offering or the placement memorandum of a private placement. In some cases, private placements don't have placement memorandums, so we just wanted to note that tax diligence needed to be completed prior to pricing. So it's
And
really.
the second one?
And the second one has to do with TEFRA. You know, we are looking for TEFRA to be complete, meaning that the notice goes out and the hearing is held prior to mailing the preliminary official statement. It's the same thought here. To the extent that we're going to expand this to private placements, if you have a placement memorandum, the same criteria would apply, where TEFRA hearing would be complete prior to both the mailing of a POS for a publicly offered deal and before the mailing of a placement memorandum in the case of a private placement. But again, noting that in some cases, private placements don't have placement memorandums, in which case the TEFRA notice and hearing must be complete prior to pricing.
I would liken this to some of the work that we do in the housing side, where you have an inducement or a TEFRA, and then you can go directly to an issuance. I think in this stuff where it's conduit issuance, really. I mean, we have to obviously do our diligence and all that.
Especially in the private placement world, you're right. I get it.
Right. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And you're dealing with sophisticated parties,
Yes.
so it's not just retail investors.
Right.
Portia, if you were looking backwards, say over the past 12 months, how would this have impacted past deals? Is there anything that you can look back on and give us some information on? Would things have changed that much? Would there be any problems or?
We wouldn't have to have an August meeting.
That is a very prescient observation.
That is, then there's
Except that they're
that,
new,
then there's
except that they're
that.
new technically, so we would.
But
theoretically.
but in addition to that, but is there any other pitfalls or advantages as you look back as to what we've done?
So Bill, I like to get back to you on the 12-month look back, but looking back, in general, I would say that I don't really see pitfalls here. I think that the class of borrowers that we're looking at here, we had talked for a long time about higher education and healthcare clients rated in the BBB category. I think we've seen a number of those to the extent that we're talking about existing clients. My sense from the discussion at the board meetings is that, I think it seems as though you're pretty comfortable with those clients. And then similarly, for the borrowers that have credits that are programmatic in nature, OCs, libraries, I think you're pretty comfortable with that. And we've talked about the private placements in the past and the fact that it's really quids, they're sophisticated investors, all the things that Lisa just noted. So, to me, I think based on the experience of sort of the board meetings over the last several years, it seemed to me that this probably fit within the comfort level based on the nature of conversation and discourse at past board meetings. Clearly there was discussion very specifically about new clients rated in the BBB category. And so, this discussion draft reflects that. And I think, we totally as staff understand that for a new client coming in that's, in the BBB category, that you would appreciate the opportunity to, be able to take a look at it the first time around and get a sense, when we're sort of telling the story, and then, have the opportunity to continue to think about that, and then come back later to adopt the actual documents.
And again, I agree with you. I think it works for new clients, especially those with not an A rating. I think it works to everyone's advantage, the client, to us, to our reputation, to the state. I think it's good to have another set of eyes for those particular clients, so.
And the staff will always have discretion. I mean, if the team decides that
Something comes up at
is
the last,
weird,
between
like-
rating
Right,
issues or.
financial change or a staff change or reputational change or something like that that could impact the issuance, I would think that the staff would sort of do the prudent thing.
Yeah.
I'm confident, let me just rephrase it, I'm confident that the staff would do the
Yes.
prudent thing.
And I'll just add two observations. One, I think when Portia will elaborate on the look back, but when we look at some of the other credits that we've done in the last 12 months, it's a little bit about parity. For example, with the BOCES transaction and with the libraries transactions, we would have been able to potentially provide market access a little bit sooner on that. So I think that's one of the components that we can always look at is would that month have made a difference in terms of market access?
But I think when you're in a volatile time, you want as much flexibility
Yes.
as you can without taking undue risk, right?
And then the second point is, which I think is really important, is that when we talk about our inquiries in terms of potential deals, it's a two-way conversation in terms of if there's anyone that the board is particularly concerned about or has or thinks they may want some more diligence on, you can easily, say at that point, well, is this one scheduled for a one-step or a two-step? And give us direction, at that time as well. So I think that there are two mechanisms to make sure that that dialogue on one step and two versus two-step happens in addition to our discretion, which I think, Portia has a good handle, and her team on when to utilize those mechanics, but the board also has an opportunity to give us guidance on that as well.
Right. Janice, Joan, Albany, any other comments? We've been hogging the discussion on this end.
Nope.
All right, so I think
From my perspective, this seems very reasonable. And just from the history since I've been on the board, I find that the staff is extremely competent and appropriately raise the red flags when it's necessary. So I'm comfortable with this.
We have more time to think about
Right.
it.
Well, yeah, no, I think let's think about it the rest of the summer, but if
Yes.
people are comfortable, it would be, I think,
Fine.
good going into the fall financing season to have an approval if people, I don't
You
mean
want
to
to
speak
approve it
for
at
any.
the August meeting?
If folks are
Yeah.
there, we can certainly add that.
Yeah,
Have a minute.
if he's gonna be here, he wants to do 3 things, not 1 thing.
We'll make it.
Yeah, no, I think
Like to be productive.
Look, I'm not trying to railroad anything
Yes, you wanna
through,
get
but
the
I
first
think
time.
that if people are comfortable with this, I know I certainly am, and it sounds like I'm seeing heads nodding in the New York City office, Joan is, you know, I think we can continue to discuss, but I think it would be great if the staff would bring something, you know, for a motion for either preliminary approval or limited approval, whatever you all wanna do, I think we should start doing it.
Okay.
And it will also allow the staff to sort of pace their transactions better. It'll help with capacity, particularly what we're not, you know, we're always searching for staff. So I think it's a good thing. Okay, all right. Anything else, Portia?
Nope, that's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Kim, talk to us about the financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As highlighted in the standing financial report, our personnel expenses are in line with projections, while non-personnel expenses are slightly under projection as of May. And through May, we've closed 3 private client deals generating $400,000 in revenue. Percentage of direct hours charged to public programs is slightly up at 96.1% against a budget of 94.7%. On to project updates, just a brief update on our Dynamics 365 implementation. Now that the audit is over, staff has turned their attention and focus back to activities related to the implementation. Budget-related activities for our business release 1, workflow notifications for budgeting and GL entries have been configured and tested. Final email notification language is being developed. Purchase requisitions for operating purchase orders have been configured and testing has commenced. Testing for the budget planning is 95% complete. Other ongoing work associated with the project includes file formats for our bank-to-bank transfers and bank reconciliations are currently in testing for our Bank of America and Bank New York Mellon file format. Security setup and planning documentation has been submitted to HSO for configuration, and user role testing has commenced in a testing environment. IS has performed 2 version upgrades, keeping the application current while adding release features where applicable. The initial connection with PM Web has been completed with the ability to push and pull basic data such as project ID between the 2 applications. There's a meeting with the integration vendor scheduled for later this week to fully spec out the integrations between the 2 systems. Our IS team continues to work on development of a vendor collaboration portal, which will include the ability to collect W-9 forms from our vendors electronically. We're currently reviewing change requests for previously identified gaps. And at the present time, HSO has not identified anything that will impact our project schedule. On the data project side, the J.D. Edwards legacy data, including GL balances and vendors, have been mapped and successfully to D365 data. Additional legacy data mapping is progressing as additional configurations are completed in the system. Unless there's any questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions? Anybody? All right, thank you, Kim. I know you all are working hard during the summer and we appreciate it. Okay, Steve, you got the construction report?
I do, thank you. There were 5 new projects added during the reporting period, 4 for CUNY, 1 for OPW. Total project value of those 5 is in excess of 55 million. Expenditures were 150 million for May of 2024, through May of 2024, which is 41 million above the same reporting period for 2023. On the cover of the construction project report is SUNY Alfred's Mackenzie Hall Phase 3. This was the rehabilitation of 3 towers, 2 row houses, and the full demolition of 1 row house to facilitate the creation of an accessible roadway. The project budget was about 23 million. Mock Architects was our design professional. We completed construction in January of 24. A couple of project-specific updates. On the SUNY side, FIT, we received the most recent project schedule from our general contractor. The completion date is slipped now into September of 24. Commissioning continues as well as approval and finishes. We've been on the project site weekly for project meetings. Good news out of Albany, the Colonial Quad project received a TCO about 2 weeks ago. Finished work continues, but the 2 low-rise residence halls will be ready for occupancy in August, as well as the new fitness center. Mohonk Hall at SUNY New Pulse, the $49 million gut reno, and the addition of the 4th floor is moving along nicely. Abatement work is nearly complete. The 4th floor structural steel has been added. The lateral load resisting system is in progress, and floor framing has commenced. Substantial completion is targeted for July of 25. Lastly, on the SUNY projects for the summer, 25 projects with a value of nearly 50 million. They're moving along rather well. There's a couple of blips we're keeping a close eye on, trying to accelerate to meet our August commitments. As far as CUNY goes, our next scheduled meeting with CUNY's facility staff is on July 25th, next week. Kate Silly-Kirk and Mike Stabulus and I will be attending that. Heavy workloads for CUNY at Queens, Hunter, Lehman, York, CSI, New York City Tech, and City College. On the OPW, DD, and OMH front, a large backlog of projects at St. Lawrence, Mid-Hudson, Capital District, Rochester, Central New York, South Beach, Queensboro, Pilgrim, PC, and Mohawk Valley. The Mid-Hudson $300 million project, our main package, was advertised and will be opened on July 25th. We've received interest from about 5 general contractors, which is good news from a competition standpoint. The Western New York Children's Project, reported on that last month, experienced delays due to the discovery that the roof framing members associated with the new addition were not sized appropriately. There really isn't an update. We're working on repair documents and trying to move that forward.
Sign issue.
DOH Life Sciences Lab, Robert reported on that. The project is moving along. We met with the Capital District BCTC this past Monday, as well as all the local business agents talking about the PLA and NWB activities to try to ramp up for that project. On the administrative side, continue to have over 45 open positions in the construction division. PLA is coming up. The Rochester PLA, hopefully at the next board meeting, should be ready for action. I mentioned the DOH PLA. There's also 2 other PLAs in the Binghamton Oswego region. We began discussions with the BCTC there. PM web implementation, over 1,200 projects in the system now. We're about 80% done with the migration from CM to PM web. We've saved the toughest projects for last, so over the next quarter plus, we'll be working on migrating those. Our summer interns are fully engaged, many of them at project sites, as well as in our Albany and New York City offices. We've got a pretty good crop this summer. Looking forward to some of them joining us next year full time. Eric McQuaid, Joanna Yackel, and myself were at the NIAPA conference yesterday. We presented on DASNY. Joanna presented on the community college offerings, and Eric presented on the OPR. We also had Kristen Costello and Janine Teff there manning the DASNY booth. Lastly, we have our next quarterly construction division directors and chiefs meeting in Rochester on August 2nd. We'll be tackling internal audit findings and seeking solutions for implementation.
Any questions for Steve? Seems like you're having a busy summer.
Sweating out soon.
What's that?
Sweating out soon.
Sweating out SUNY, there you All right.
It's a
so-
yearly thing.
So I think that that is the end of our regularly scheduled agenda. Does anybody have anything else we need to talk about? Okay, may we then have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Thank you, Beryl.
Second.
Thank you, Wellington. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Any abstention? Motion carries. Okay, we will see everybody back unless otherwise something else comes up, August 21st.
Thank you.
All right.